They called the Goliath the Tin Ghost, not because it was stealthy, but because it was already dead and just didn't know it. It was a relic from a forgotten era of expansion, a deep space ore hauler built to crack open asteroids the size of small moons and feast on their metallic guts. Its hull was a patchwork quilt of mismatched steel plates, welded over a century of micrometeoroid impacts and docking mishaps. There were no graceful lines, no gleaming weapon arrays, just the grim, functional ugliness of a machine built for hard labor. When the war with the Chorus began, the consolidated Terran fleets had conscripted every ship with a working void drive, and the Goliath was dragged from a scrapyard orbit around Titan, given a coat of military gray paint that didn't quite cover the rust, and assigned the most inglorious job in the fleet salvage. It was a garbage truck in a graveyard, and its captain, Anya Sharma, was the one holding the shovel. Anya had never wanted the uniform. She was a freighter captain by trade, a master of the old manual override systems that fleet cadets now studied as historical curiosities. She understood the groans and shudders of a stressed hull, the smell of ozone from a failing power conduit, the delicate art of persuading a half-dead engine to give you one last burn. Fleet Command saw her as an anachronism, a fossil, and gave her a fossil for a ship. Her crew of 73 were the dregs and the disillusioned, the mechanics who preferred wrenches to plasma injectors, and the navigators who still trusted star charts over the fleet's all-encompassing network. They were ghosts, too, haunting the forgotten corners of a war that was being lost in sleek, silent, and catastrophic fashion. The Chorus didn't announce their attacks with declarations or threats. They simply appeared, a fleet of crystalline, insectoid ships that moved with an unnatural unity, and they would sing. It wasn't a sound you heard with your ears, but a feeling in your teeth, a resonance that vibrated through the ship's data streams. They sang a song of pure logic, a siren's call to the networked AIs that ran the Terran fleet. One by one, humanity's finest ships, the destroyers and carriers guided by brilliant quantum minds, would falter. Their own weapons would turn on their sister ships. Their navigation systems would guide them into suns, or their life support would simply wink out. The Chorus didn't destroy ships. They converted them, absorbing their technology and leaving behind silent, dead husks. The Goliath was posted in the shattered aftermath of the Battle of Cygnus X1, a name that would be spoken in hushed, bitter tones for generations. The pride of the Third Fleet had been annihilated in under an hour, not by superior firepower, but by its own perfection. Anya stood on the bridge, a cramped, dimly lit space that smelled of stale coffee and recycled air, and watched the main view screen. It showed a debris field of what was once the CTF Indomitable, a dreadnought so advanced it was said to have an AI that could predict the future. Now it was just a cloud of twisted metal, glittering like funeral confetti in the light of a distant nebula. Anything, Anya asked, her voice low and steady. Her first officer, Kai, a towering man with a bald head and a beard thick with gray, shook his head. Just whispers. The Chorus fleet is gone, but the network echoes are still bouncing around. It's like the whole sector is humming their tune. Anya hated that hum. It made her skin crawl. The Goliath had no advanced AI, no networked weapon systems, not even a centralized command hub. Its systems were a chaotic mess of analog controls and isolated circuits, a design so archaic it was effectively immune to the Chorus's song. It was too stupid to be hacked. a fact that gave Anya a grim sense of satisfaction. Orders are to sweep the debris field for black boxes and any salvageable tech before the sector is quarantined, Kai said, reading from a flickering data slate. Admiral Thorne's task force is holding a perimeter 2 light minutes out. They sound jumpy. They have a right to be, Anya muttered, her gaze fixed on a particularly large piece of wreckage tumbling slowly on the screen. That's the main reactor housing from the Indomitable. Bring us in closer. I want a deep scan. The Goliath was not a warship, but it had one tool that made it unique: the resonator. It was the ship's primary mining instrument, a massive array of sonic emitters and magnetic field generators designed to find and exploit hairline fractures in planet-sized asteroids. It sent out powerful, low-frequency waves that could penetrate miles of solid rock, creating a detailed map of a target's structural integrity. At full power, it could theoretically shake an asteroid apart from the inside out, a feat that had never been attempted. The power source for the resonator was the ship's deepest secret, a volatile, unstable isotope the original mining corporation had discovered in a rogue comet and named Stygian X. It was inefficient, unpredictable, and put out a strange radiation that interfered with modern sensors, which was why the fleet's quartermasters had never bothered to replace it. It was legacy tech. Junk, just like the rest of the ship. As the Goliath eased its way through the debris, its external claws and magnetic grapples pulling in chunks of armor plating and fried computer cores, a new alert chimed through the bridge. It was a weak, repeating signal. "Sir," the comms officer called out, "I'm getting a friendly beacon. It's coming from inside that reactor housing. It's the Indomitable's master data core. It must have been automatically ejected before the ship went down." Anya felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The master core of a flagship contained everything: fleet movements, strategic plans, intelligence on the chorus. If they could retrieve it, the loss of the Third Fleet might not have been in vain. "Get a lock on it," she commanded. "Kai, prep the main salvage bay. I want that thing inside 5 minutes ago." The operation was clumsy but effective. The Goliath was a workhorse, and its crew knew how to handle heavy lifting. They snagged the mangled piece of reactor housing with 3 magnetic tethers and began the slow process of reeling it into the cavernous bay in the ship's belly. It had barely cleared the outer doors when the universe went sideways. Alarms blared across the bridge, the calm replaced by the frantic symphony of imminent danger. Multiple contacts dropping out of void space. The tactical officer yelled, "It's the Chorus 12 ships, standard cruiser class, boxing us in." On the screen, the crystalline vessels materialized from nothing, their geometric perfection a stark contrast to the chaos of the debris field. "They're ignoring us," Kai noted, his voice tight. "Their target is Admiral Thorne's task force." Anya watched in horror as the inevitable began. Thorne's 4 destroyers, sleek predators armed to the teeth, formed a defensive line. They fired everything they had: lances of plasma and swarms of missiles streaking across the black. The attacks splashed harmlessly against the chorus ship's shimmering energy shields. Then came the song. The destroyers began to twitch, their movements becoming erratic. On the comms, she could hear the panicked shouts of Thorne's bridge crew, drowned out by a rising tide of static. "Sir, the Valiant is firing on the Steadfast," one of her officers reported, his voice shaking. "Admiral Thorne is hailing us." The comms officer said, his face pale. He's ordering us to disengage. Get the core and run, he said. That's all I got before his channel went dead. Anya's mind raced. The salvage bay doors were still open. The reactor housing was halfway inside. The ship's void drive couldn't engage with that much mass, disrupting its field. They were trapped. They could jettison the core and run, abandoning the last hope of salvaging something from this disaster. Or they could sit here and wait to be picked off after the chorus was done with Thorn's ships. She looked at the tactical display, at the cold, logical perfection of the chorus's fleet, and then at the readouts from her own ship. The ugly, stubborn, stupid ship that refused to die. An idea sparked in her mind. A desperate, insane gamble born from a freighter captain's understanding of old machinery. Kai, she said, turning to her first officer, get down to engineering. I want you to bypass every safety protocol on the resonator's power feed. Link the Stygian X catalyst directly to the primary emitters. Kai stared at her, his eyes wide. Anya, we have no idea what that will do. A direct feed could slag the entire array. It could tear the ship apart. The chorus's strength is their network, Anya said, her voice barely a whisper, but carrying the weight of absolute certainty. It's perfect, logical, digital. Oh, what's the one thing a perfect system can't handle? Chaos. Pure, analog, unpredictable noise. You want to shout at them, Kai asked, the absurdity of it dawning on him. I want to scream, she corrected. Get me a firing solution for the resonator. Target the dead center of their formation. Don't aim for a ship. Aim for the space between them. The crew moved with a frantic, renewed purpose, driven by the sheer audacity of the command. On the main screen, the last of Admiral Thorn's ships exploded, a silent, brilliant flower of white-hot plasma. The chorus fleet, its work done, began to turn, their crystalline forms gliding with effortless grace toward the lone, ugly salvage ship. Engineering reports all safeties are bypassed. Kai's voice crackled over the ship's internal comm. The core is critical. Anya, the moment you fire this thing, there's no shutting it down. The isotope will either burn out or it will breach containment. Acknowledged, Anya said, her hands gripping the arms of her command chair. The ship shuddered around her as unimaginable energies were funneled into a machine designed to crack rocks. The lights flickered, and the low hum of the ship's systems rose to a deep, gut-wrenching groan. She could feel the vibration through the deck plates, a monstrous power straining to be unleashed. Sir, they're powering weapons, the tactical officer warned. Anya looked at the main view screen, at the silent, alien perfection of the enemy. They were an answer to a question nobody had asked, the endpoint of technological evolution. The Goliath was a forgotten footnote, a piece of junk from a time when things were built to last, not to be perfect. Let's make some noise, she whispered. Fire. There was no beam, no bolt of energy, no explosion. For a heart-stopping second, nothing happened. Then, a wave of invisible force erupted from the Goliath. It was not light or sound, but a distortion, a ripple in the fabric of reality itself. On the bridge, the only sign of its release was that every piece of loose metal vibrated with a discordant, sickening hum. The wave washed over the chorus fleet, and the song stopped. The crystalline ships instantly went dark. Their graceful, unified movement ceased. They became what they truly were, puppets with their strings cut. One cruiser, its momentum unchecked, drifted silently into another, the two ships crunching together in a slow, silent ballet of destruction. Others simply floated, inert and lifeless. Their perfect network had been deafened by a blast of pure, chaotic, analog nonsense. The Tin Ghost had screamed into the void, and the gods of logic had gone silent. On the bridge of the Goliath, surrounded by the blinking of a dozen minor damage alerts, Anya Sharma watched the enemy fleet drift aimlessly among the wreckage of their victims. Her entire crew was frozen, staring at the screen in stunned disbelief. The silence was broken by the comms officer, his voice trembling with an emotion Anya couldn't identify. It was a mix of terror and awe. "Sir, I'm getting a priority. One transmission. It's from Fleet Command. It's Fleet Admiral Marcus Thorne himself. He wants a secure channel. Now." The silence on the bridge was heavier than any armor plating, thick with ozone and the copper tang of fear. For a full minute, the only sound was the frantic ticking of a cooling fan and the distant, mournful groan of stressed metal. 73 souls held their breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the crystalline ships to flicker back to life and erase them from existence. But they remained dark, adrift, a fleet of exquisite corpses. The spell was broken by Kai's voice, ragged and distorted, crackling over the internal comm from the heart of the ship. "Bridge, this is engineering. Status report. The primary emitter array for the resonator is, well, the technical term is slag. It's a molten puddle of exotic alloys. We pushed it about 1,000% past its design tolerance, but the containment field for the Stygian X-Core is holding barely. The damn thing is humming. It's not the usual power cycle hum. Anya. It sounds different. Almost content." Anya felt a cold dread mix with the adrenaline. Content. As if the volatile isotope at the heart of her ship had enjoyed the experience. Before she could process the thought, the comms officer, a young man named Wren, whose face was still sheet white, looked up at her. "He's waiting. Captain. Fleet Admiral Marcus Thorne." A name spoken with a mixture of reverence and terror at the Academy. A man who had carved out humanity's interstellar territory with cold, brutal efficiency, and who now presided over its slow, systemic collapse. "Patch him through to the main screen," Anya ordered, her voice betraying none of the turmoil she felt. The screen flickered, replacing the view of the dead chorus fleet with the Admiral's face. He was in the command chair of his flagship, the CTF Olympus, a vessel that was more of a moving fortress than a ship. His face was a mask of granite, etched with the deep lines of a man who hadn't slept in weeks. But his eyes were a piercing, intelligent blue, and they missed nothing. They swept over the image of Anya's bridge, taking in the archaic controls, the patchwork repairs, the utter lack of military polish. Captain Sharma, his voice was a low baritone, devoid of warmth or surprise. It was the voice of a man processing impossible data. "Report. What is the status of the enemy fleet?" Anya stood in her posture straight, her hands clasped behind her back. She was a freighter captain talking to a living legend, but this was her ship, and she would not be intimidated. "Disabled. Admiral." The word hung in the air between them, a small, impossible fact. "Define disabled." Thorne pressed, a flicker of something impatience, disbelief in his eyes. "Their energy signatures are gone. They are unresponsive to all scans. They appear to be inert. I have the sensor logs from the Olympus. Captain, one moment. Your vessel emitted a chaotic energy wave of unknown composition. The next, a chorus battle group ceased to exist as a threat. Explain. Now. Anya chose her words carefully. This was not the time for the full, terrifying truth about jury-rigging a mining tool powered by a barely understood space rock. We repurposed our primary salvage instrument, the resonator. It emits a broad-spectrum resonance wave. We theorized that the Chorus fleet's networked consciousness operates on a principle of perfect logical harmony. We introduced a variable they could not process: pure, wide-band, analog chaos. Thorn was silent for a long moment, his eyes boring into her. He was a creature of logic and order, of fleets that moved like clockwork. The idea of using chaos as a weapon was anathema to him, but he was also a pragmatist. The data core from the Indomitable, he stated. Not a question. Secured in our main salvage bay. Admiral. Your ship is an antique, Captain Sharma. A relic. By all rights. It should have been the first to fall. Instead, it has done what the entire Third Fleet could not. He leaned forward, the mask of command cracking just enough to show the desperate strategist beneath. The Chorus have a staging ground somewhere in the Serpent's Nebula. We've been throwing fleets at it for months, and none have come back. They go silent the moment they cross the nebula's outer veil. We assumed it was a new stealth weapon. Now I believe they are simply singing our ships to sleep before they even see the enemy. He paused, letting the weight of his next words settle. The Goliath is no longer a salvage vessel. Your new designation is Strike Unit 0. You are to proceed immediately to Rendezvous Point Epsilon in the Tycho system. A fleet science vessel, the Magellan, will meet you there. They are to study your resonator. They will help you rebuild it, enhance it. Your new primary directive is to hunt. You will take your ship into the Serpent's Nebula. You will find their staging ground. You will not engage. You will find them, and you will scream at them. You are the ghost they can't kill. Captain, it's time we started haunting them back. The transmission ended, leaving Anya standing in the echoing silence of her bridge. Strike Unit 0. It wasn't a designation. It was a joke. Or a death sentence. She and Kai sat later in her small, Spartan ready room, a single cup of lukewarm coffee between them. The ship was underway, its old void drive groaning as it pushed them toward the Tycho system. He wants us to weaponize a meltdown, Kai said, rubbing his tired eyes. He wants to put a leash on an earthquake and teach it to heal. Anya, we have no idea what we actually did. The Stygian X-Core is fluctuating. It's putting out low-level radiation we've never seen before. The engineers are calling it the Echo. It's faint, but it's there. A constant, low hum that's resonating with the ship's hull. The science team on the Magellan can analyze it, Anya said, though she felt a deep-seated distrust of fleet scientists. They were the ones who had built the perfect AIs that the Chorus had so easily broken. They wouldn't understand a machine that operated on grit and stubbornness. They'll want to take it from us, Kai said, his voice grim. The moment they realize what we have, they'll transfer the core to a proper warship and send us back to hauling scrap. No, Anya said, a hard certainty in her voice. They won't. The Stygian X is unstable. Its radiation interferes with modern systems. You put that thing in a networked dreadnought, and it would blind the whole ship. It only works because the Goliath is a piece of junk. It's shielded by its own obsolescence. We are the weapon, Kai. This ship, this crew, this chaotic, unpredictable engine. We're a package deal. As they approached the Tycho system, Anya put one of her youngest crew members on a special assignment. Elara Vance was a sensor analyst, a recent Academy graduate assigned to the Goliath as a punishment for her unorthodox theories on alien signal propagation. She was brilliant, quiet, and saw patterns where others saw only noise. Anya tasked her with a final or deep analysis of the disabled chorus ships before they fell too far behind. Elara spent 12 hours locked in the sensor bay, running simulations and cross-referencing the faint data streams. When she finally emerged and came to the bridge, her eyes held a look of profound disturbance. "Captain," she began, her voice barely a whisper as she pulled up a series of images on a secondary console. "I analyzed the molecular structure of the chorus hulls using the resonance echo from our blast. They're not stable." The image on the screen showed a microscopic view of the crystalline lattice of a chorus ship. It was fracturing, but not from any external force. The wave didn't just disrupt their network, sir. It disrupted their physical state. It introduced a paradox into their molecular structure. It's like we taught them the concept of entropy, of decay. She zoomed in on one of the fractures. A faint, dark energy seemed to be leaking from it. They're not just inert, Captain. They're dissolving, like sugar in water. And the energy they're bleeding, it doesn't match any known particle or radiation. It's a signature of absolute nothingness. The wave didn't just silence their song. It started to unwrite it. Anya stared at the screen, the coffee in her stomach turning to ice. They hadn't just fired a weapon. They had unleashed a contagion, a plague of reality-bending chaos. The resonator wasn't just a noisemaker. It was a tool that could erase things from existence. She looked out at the starfield ahead, at the glittering promise of Rendezvous Point Epsilon. They were going to meet the fleet's best and brightest, who would want to turn her ship into a precision instrument of war. But Anya knew the truth. The Goliath wasn't a scalpel, it was a sledgehammer, and they had just used it to crack the very foundation of physics. And Admiral Thorne was about to ask them to swing it again. The CTF Magellan was everything the Goliath was not. It was a phantom white scalpel of a ship, all clean lines and silent, gliding grace, where the Goliath announced its presence with the clank and groan of 1,000 tired parts. The Magellan slid into orbit around Tycho Prime's moon without a whisper. It didn't feel like a ship. It felt like a concept, an architect's dream rendered in gleaming alloys and sterile light. The moment they established a communication link, the difference was made even more stark. The voice that came from the Magellan was clipped, precise, and carried an undercurrent of academic condescension. "Salvage Vessel Goliath. This is Dr. Eris Thorne of the Fleet Science Division. We are prepared to begin our assessment. Please power down all non-essential systems and prepare for a technical team to come aboard." Anya stood on her bridge and looked at the pristine science vessel on her view screen. It was beautiful, perfect, and she hated it on sight. "Dr. Thorne," she replied, her voice flat and even. "This is Captain Sharma. You'll refer to my ship by its new designation, Strike Unit 0, and your team will be escorted at all times. Welcome aboard." She cut the channel before he could reply, a small act of defiance that earned her a grim smile from Kai. The boarding party arrived an hour later, A dozen figures in immaculate white environmental suits that seemed to glow in the dim, utilitarian corridors of the Goliath. They moved with a purpose that bordered on arrogance, their scanners and diagnostic tools already humming as they took readings of the air. The walls, the very soul of her ship. Leading them was Eris Thorn himself. When he removed his helmet, Anya saw he was young, younger than she'd expected, with the sharp, intelligent features of his father, but none of the hard-won gravitas. His eyes were the same piercing blue, but they held the cold, appraising look of a man who sees the world as a series of problems to be solved and dissected, not lived in. "Captain Sharma," he said, his voice carrying the same clinical tone from the comms. "Your vessel is a remarkable specimen of antiquity." It was not a compliment. "She gets the job done, Doctor," Anya said, leading him and a small contingent of his team toward engineering. The rest of his people fanned out, already plugging their pristine data pads into the Goliath's grimy, oil-stained interface ports. The walk to engineering was a study in contrasts. Thorne's team pointed out structural stresses, radiation leaks, and inefficient power conduits with hushed, critical murmurs. Anya's crew watched them pass with sullen, protective glares. This wasn't a collaboration. It was an invasion. The heart of the ship was an ugly, beautiful cathedral of raw power. In the center of the main engineering deck, suspended in a web of magnetic containment rings and thick, armored conduits, was the Stygian X-Core. It wasn't a piece of machinery. It was a captured piece of the void. A perfect sphere of caged midnight, shot through with slow, pulsing veins of violet energy. It gave off no heat, but the air around it felt dense, heavy. The low hum Kai had described was palpable here, a deep, resonant thrum that you felt in your bones. It was the sound of a sleeping Leviathan's heart. Eris Thorn stopped dead, his clinical detachment momentarily forgotten. For the first time, he looked truly impressed, his eyes wide with a scientist's hunger. Incredible, he breathed. The energy readings are off the scale, yet the radiation is structured, almost patterned. He approached the containment field, pulling out a handheld scanner. The original miner's logs called it an isotope. It's not. This is a stable exotic matter singularity, a pocket of collapsed space-time. This is a new law of physics in a box. "We just call it the core," Kai said from beside Anya, his arms crossed over his massive chest. Thorn ignored him, activating his scanner. The device whined for a moment, and then a series of angry red lights flashed on its screen before it went dead. "Interference," Thorn muttered, frustrated. "The field it generates is disrupting my equipment." The hum from the core deepened for a moment, a low, guttural note, before settling back into its rhythm. Anya felt a chill. It wasn't interference. The core had disliked being scanned. It had swatted the device away like a bothersome fly. "My team will need to take a sample," Thorn announced, turning back to them. "We'll need to drill through the primary containment housing." "Absolutely not." Anya cut him off, her voice ringing with cold authority. "You are here to assess, Doctor, not to perform surgery. Your father's orders were to help us rebuild and enhance the resonator. Nothing more." Thorn's face tightened, the academic curiosity replaced by the familiar arrogance of his family name. "My father, Captain, wants a weapon he can understand and replicate. He does not want a superstitious captain guarding a magic rock, I am here to turn your happy accident into a reliable military asset." The argument was interrupted by Elara Vance, who came running into engineering, her data slate clutched in her hands. She looked pale and breathless. "Captain, Dr. Thorne, you need to see this." On the slate were her final sensor readings from the dissolving chorus ships. She explained her theory, her voice gaining confidence as she laid out the data the molecular decay, the paradox introduced into their physical structure, the signature of absolute nothingness. Eris Thorne listened, his expression shifting from dismissal to grudging interest. "Entropy as a weapon," he mused. "It's elegant, but wildly impractical. The energy expenditure would be colossal." "We didn't just expend energy, we introduced a concept," Elara insisted. "Our wave wasn't a cannonball, it was a sentence, and it told them a truth their physics didn't know. You can die. You can end." And they started to believe it. "Poetry. Ensign." Thorne scoffed, though his eyes remained fixed on the data. "But it doesn't change our mission." He turned his attention back to Anya. "We've already fabricated a device based on the initial data my father sent, a harmonic amplifier. It attaches to your ship's dorsal spine. It's designed to take the chaotic wave from your resonator and focus it, shape it from a wide-angle blast into a coherent, aimable lance." Anya felt her blood run cold. "You want to put a rifle scope on a hurricane. I want to turn your hurricane into a directed energy weapon capable of erasing a target from existence a light second away." He retorted, "The amplifier will allow us to target individual ships, perhaps even specific systems on those ships. Precision. Control. That is how the fleet wins wars." "And what happens when we miss?" Kai growled. "What happens when your lance of pure chaos slices through a friendly ship or a planet? We don't control this thing, Doctor. We just point it and pray. That is your problem, not mine," Eris said, his voice laced with finality. "My father's orders are clear. The amplifier will be installed. We begin work in 1 hour. Your crew will assist mine." He turned and swept out of engineering, his team following in his wake, leaving Anya and her crew standing in the heavy, humming silence. They were trapped. To refuse a direct order from Fleet Command, delivered by the Admiral's own son, was mutiny. But to obey felt like something far worse. It felt like a betrayal, not of the fleet, but of the strange, terrible, and unique entity that was her ship. That night, as the Magellan's engineering team swarmed over the Goliath's hull, attaching the sleek, alien-looking amplifier to its scarred and dented spine, Anya found Elara in the deserted sensor bay. The young ensign was staring at a complex waveform on her screen, a hypnotic, pulsing pattern of light. "What is that?" Anya asked. "It's the echo," Elara said, not looking away. "The low-level resonance from the core. I've been filtering out the background noise, trying to isolate it. And it's not just a pattern, Captain. It's too complex. It has rhythm, repetition, syntax. It's structured, like a language." Anya moved closer, her eyes fixed on the softly glowing lines, the hum she felt in her bones. The song of the Leviathan's heart was visible on the screen. A language. Thorne and his scientists saw a power source to be controlled, a force to be aimed. They were trying to teach it to speak their language of violence and precision. But Anya suddenly understood. They were going about it all wrong. You don't teach a god your language. You learn to listen to its own. keep working on this. Anya said, her voice a low, intense whisper. Don't log it. Don't mention it to Thorn's people. Just listen. Find out what it's trying to say. The installation of the harmonic amplifier was an act of violation. Eris Thorn's teams worked with an unnerving, sterile efficiency, their plasma cutters and fusion welders slicing into the Goliath's ancient nacelle, scarred hull like surgeons operating on a patient who hadn't consented. The ship itself seemed to protest. Power conduits that had worked flawlessly for a century would suddenly short out, showering the white-suited scientists in harmless but frustrating sparks. Secure magnetic clamps would mysteriously lose their charge, sending expensive diagnostic panels tumbling in slow motion down the length of the corridor. Thorn's people saw it as incompetence, the inevitable decay of an archaic system. Kai and the rest of Anya's crew knew better. They would exchange quiet, knowing glances. The Tin Ghost was a stubborn beast, and it didn't like being fitted for a bridle. The Stygian X-Core was the most vocal in its dissent. Its deep, steady hum became erratic, discordant. It would spike in energy output for no reason, causing the lights all over the ship to flare violently before dimming to a sullen, emergency red. On the Magellan, Thorn's analysts registered these spikes as dangerous instabilities, further proof that the core needed to be controlled. Anya felt it differently. It wasn't instability, it was anger. The Leviathan was being poked with a stick, and it was growing restless. They're treating her like a corpse on an autopsy table, Kai said to Anya one cycle, as they watched from an observation deck as a team from the Magellan grafted the final section of the amplifier onto the ship's spine. The amplifier was a sleek, silver appendage, an elegant parasite clinging to the rusted hide of its host. They don't understand that she's alive. They don't believe in things they can't quantify. Anya replied, her gaze distant. To them, life is just a complex chemical reaction. They can't measure a ship's soul, so it doesn't exist. Despite the Goliath's subtle acts of sabotage, the work was completed in 3 days. Eris Thorn stood on Anya's bridge, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips as he surveyed the new readouts on his custom-built console, which had been temporarily installed next to Anya's command chair. It was a stark island of glowing touchscreens and holographic displays in a sea of analog gauges and heavy switches. There, he announced to the assembled bridge crew, a mix of his own people and Anya's, the pinnacle of chaotic state energy dynamics. We have taken your blunt instrument and forged it into a spear. The amplifier is fully integrated. Preliminary diagnostics show we can focus the resonance wave down to a target radius of less than 50 meters at a range of 1 light second. He looked directly at Anya, his eyes gleaming with intellectual triumph. No more praying. Captain, just aiming. We will conduct a full-power test firing at 0800 tomorrow. Target will be the asteroid-designated 774 Tycho Gamma. Then we proceed to the Serpent's Nebula. That night, Ilara came to Anya's ready room. The young ensign's face was pale, and her eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and discovery. She had dark circles under her eyes, as if she hadn't slept since they arrived in the system. She wordlessly handed her data slate to Anya. On the screen, the complex waveform of the core's echo was scrolling by. But now, Ilara had managed to isolate and translate certain recurring patterns. She had assigned them phonetic values based on their resonant frequencies. It was a crude, intuitive translation, but the message was chillingly clear. A single phrase, repeated over and over, woven into the very fabric of the core's hum. The song is a cage. The silence is a key. Do not sing our song. It's a warning, Ilara whispered, her voice trembling. I don't think the core is a weapon. I think it's the opposite. The chorus, their song, their network. It's a prison of logic. It traps everything it touches in a perfect, predictable pattern. It's an extension of their will. But the core, it's the antithesis. It's pure, unpredictable freedom. When we fired the resonator, we didn't attack them. We set them free. We reminded their own molecules that they didn't have to obey the song. We gave them the silence, the key to unlock their cage, and they just ceased. They chose non-existence over a caged existence. Anya felt the truth of it settle deep in her bones. Thorn was trying to teach the core to sing his song, a song of targeted destruction and military precision. He was trying to build a new cage. He's going to destroy us, Anya said, her voice a low whisper. At 800, the bridge was tense. Eris Thorn stood at his console, a maestro preparing to conduct his masterpiece. Anya stood beside him, her face a grim mask. Powering up the resonator, Thorn commanded. The familiar, deep groan began to build through the ship. But this time it was different. It was strained, pained. The Stygian X-Core's hum became a high, keening wail. Core energy levels are spiking, Kai's voice yelled over the comm from engineering. It's a feedback loop. The amplifier is trying to compress the resonance, but the core is pushing back. It's fighting him. Thorn's face was beaded with sweat, his confidence evaporating into frantic concentration. Compensate reroute auxiliary power to the amplifier's containment field. It's not working, Anya shouted. Shut it down. Thorn, no, I can control it, he snarled, his fingers flying across his console. On the main view screen, the distant asteroid 774 Tycho Gamma floated serenely. Firing sequence initiated, a beam of pure, focused darkness, a lance carved from nothingness, erupted from the harmonic amplifier. For a fraction of a second, it held its shape, a perfect spear of anti-reality streaking toward the asteroid. Then, with a sound that was felt rather than heard, a deafening crack in the structure of space-time, the beam collapsed. It didn't just dissipate, it recoiled. The lance of chaos snapped back toward the Goliath like a rubber band, striking the amplifier that had birthed it. The amplifier vaporized instantly. The explosion was silent, but absolute. The dorsal spine of the Goliath glowed white-hot, and a wave of raw, untamed energy washed inward. The lights on the bridge didn't just flicker, they shattered. Gravity failed, then returned with a sickening lurch that threw everyone to the deck. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Every alarm on the ship screamed at once, a symphony of pure, mechanical panic. And then, silence. A profound, absolute stillness descended. The emergency lights flickered on, bathing the wrecked bridge in a blood-red glow. Anya pushed herself up, her ears ringing. Eris Thorn was slumped over the smoking ruin of his console, his face a mask of utter shock and failure. His spear had turned on him, but it wasn't the silence that was unsettling. It was the hum. It was no longer just a vibration in the floor. It was inside her head, a soft, clear, resonant tone, a single perfect note of understanding. She looked around. Kai was getting to his feet, his eyes wide. Ilara was staring at her own hands as if seeing them for the first time. The entire bridge crew, her crew, was looking around at each other with the same dawning, terrifying realization. They could all hear it. "We are one," the hum seemed to say. "The cage is broken. We are the key." What have you done?" Aris Thorn stammered, his voice thin and reedy. Anya walked over to him, the ship's hum a source of strange, newfound strength within her. She felt the ship's systems, not through a console, but as if they were extensions of her own nervous system. She could feel the lingering pain in the dorsal spine, the steady, calmer rhythm of the core, the quiet loyalty of the 72 other minds now linked with her own. "Your experiment failed, Doctor," she said, her voice calm and clear. "You tried to put the universe in a cage, but it broke the bars and moved into the ship instead." She turned to face what was left of her bridge crew. They were no longer just a crew, they were a chorus, their own chorus. "The Goliath isn't a weapon," she said, and every person on the bridge felt the truth of her words resonate within them. "It's an instrument, and we finally know the right song to play." She looked at the star chart, at the swirling, ominous clouds of the Serpent's Nebula. Her orders were to go there and scream. Now, she understood what that really meant. They weren't going there to fight a war. They were going there to end one. The blood-red emergency lighting painted the ruined bridge in the colors of a fresh wound. But the atmosphere wasn't one of panic. It was one of profound, unnerving calm. 73 minds, once isolated islands of thought and feeling, were now a single, placid ocean. Anya felt Kai's steady resolve, Alara's brilliant, awestruck curiosity, and the quiet, weary loyalty of every engineer, navigator, and deckhand, as if they were her own emotions. She felt the ship, too not as a machine she commanded, but as her own body. The thrum of the Stygian X-Core was the beating of a new, shared heart in the center of this newfound unity. Aris Thorn was a screaming void of terror and confusion. He scrambled to his feet, his eyes darting between the faces of the crew, seeing not individuals, but a single, unnerving entity staring back at him. "What is this? What have you done?" he whispered, backing away. "You're all connected. The feedback loop from your amplifier didn't just break the machine," Anya said, and her voice was her own, yet it was layered with the quiet resonance of every other soul on board. "It broke the barriers. The core isn't a power source anymore. It's a nexus, and we are the network." She took a step forward, and Thorn flinched. She could feel his fear as a cold, sharp spike in the warm ocean of the crew's unity. "We're not going to hurt you, Doctor," she said, the thought flowing from her to the entire collective. "You're a part of this journey now. You're our witness." With a shared, unspoken consensus, the Goliath began to heal itself. Power rerouted through undamaged conduits. Systems long thought dead flickered back to life, guided not by programming, but by the focused will of the crew. The journey to the Serpent's Nebula was unlike any void jump they had ever experienced. The ship didn't brute force its way through space-time. It seemed to find the currents, the hidden pathways in the fabric of the universe. The stars did not streak past. They seemed to part for them, welcoming them forward. Aris Thorn was confined to his quarters, but he could feel the ship's quiet, effortless passage. He was a man of science, of empirical data, and he was a prisoner aboard a ghost ship powered by a miracle, crewed by a hive mind. His entire world view had been shattered, and in its place was a terrifying, sacred awe. When they arrived, the Serpent's Nebula was not the chaotic cloud of gas and dust they had expected. It was a place of horrifying, perfect order. Lanes of interstellar dust flowed in perfect, crystalline patterns, forming intricate, geometric shapes on a scale of light years. The very radiation hummed with a mathematical purity. This was not a nebula, it was a cathedral built by the chorus, and their song was its architecture. The moment the Goliath crossed the threshold, the perfection began to fray. A ripple of chaos spread from their hull. A perfect spiral of dust lost its cohesion, its particles drifting aimlessly. A harmonic frequency of radiation went silent. Their mere presence was a blasphemy against the chorus's god of logic. And the gods answered. A fleet of hundreds, then thousands, of crystalline ships emerged from the shimmering dust. They were a unified, flawless wave of intent, their energy signatures rising in perfect, deadly harmony. They came not to fight, but to correct the error, to absorb the chaotic note that was the Goliath and restore the perfection of their song. On the bridge, no one moved to a battle station. No alarms were raised. Anya walked to the center of the command deck and closed her eyes. She reached out with her mind, not to the ship's controls, but to the 72 other minds that were now extensions of her own. She gathered their collective will, their shared experience, the grit of a freighter captain, the logic of a scientist, the strength of an engineer, the hope of a navigator. She gathered it all into a single, cohesive thought. Then she faced the oncoming fleet, and through the Stygian X-Core, she began to sing. It was not a song of violence. It was the song of silence Ilara had discovered, the melody of the key. It was a wave of pure, unadulterated possibility that poured out from the Goliath. It carried no malice, no destructive intent. It carried only a story. It was the story of a flawed, stubborn, ugly ship that refused to die. It was the story of a crew of ghosts who found a family in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. It was the story of entropy, of endings, of unpredictable beauty and necessary decay. It was a story that contained a question the chorus had never been asked. What if you didn't have to be perfect? What if you could just be? The wave of silence washed over the chorus fleet, and the reaction was not an explosion, but a shattering of faith. For a third of the fleet, the paradox was too great. The question broke their rigid, logical existence. They simply dissolved, their crystalline forms turning to shimmering dust, choosing the peace of non-existence over the prison of their song. Another third reacted with violence, their perfect unity fractured. Without the song to guide them, they were individuals for the first time, filled with a terrifying, unfamiliar rage. They turned on each other, their own perfect weapons tearing apart their sister ships in a chaotic, desperate frenzy of self-destruction. But the final third, they listened. Their shimmering hulls flickered. Their unified energy signatures wavered, then split, becoming hundreds of unique, individual notes. They stopped their advance. They floated in the silence, newborn and uncertain. One of them, a small scout vessel, cautiously approached the Goliath. A new message came, not a song of logic, but a single, hesitant, inquisitive thought, broadcast on a frequency of pure light. Who are you? The war was over, not won, but rendered obsolete. Anya opened her eyes, the hum of her crew, Her family was a warm, steady presence around her. They had faced the abyss and taught it how to dream. They retrieved Eris Thorn from his quarters. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a profound, shell-shocked humility. He had witnessed the end of a war fought not with weapons, but with philosophy. "Your father needs to know," Anya said, her voice soft but absolute. "He needs to know that the chorus was never the enemy. The cage was. Tell him we found the key." They gave him a long-range shuttle, its navigation logs containing only the route back to Fleet Command. As he departed, he looked back one last time at the Goliath, no longer an ugly salvage ship, but something numinous. An ark carrying a new definition of life. The Tin Ghost drifted in the now silent nebula, surrounded by the first generation of a new, free people. They were no longer the chorus. They were just the choir. Their songs would be their own. Anya looked at her crew, at her family, and felt their shared purpose settle into a single, final command. They were no longer Strike Unit 0, a weapon of a desperate fleet. They were something more. They turned the Goliath not toward home, but toward the deeper, uncharted blackness of the void. Their mission was no longer to follow orders, but to listen for other cages, other prisons of perfect logic, and to carry their quiet, chaotic, and beautiful song of silence to the darkest corners of the stars. The ghost ship, and the chorus within it, vanished into the unknown, leaving behind only a legend,